The stock on your watch list that everyone loves? It's probably the worst deal in the market right now. Howard Marks, co-founder of Oaktree Capital, managed $120 billion in assets. And he built that fortune buying the stuff that has made other investors physically uncomfortable. His one-line test: if everybody loves it, how can you possibly steal it at a bargain price? The next time the market is in free fall and your finger hovers over the sell button, doing what feels comfortable could cost you a fortune. Marks is about to explain the art of carefully catching falling knives. Here's how he puts it.
If you want to be a reason-based investor, you don't guess at changes in popularity. You say, I think this company has an intrinsic value of 100. It's selling at 80. I'd like to buy it and hold it until the value goes to 100. See, and then you make money. If you're right, you've got to be right. But so if you're a value-based investor and you look at something and you say, I think it's worth 100, it's selling for 80, and then something bad happens and the price starts falling, 80, 75, 70, 65, 60, 55, 50, then that's a falling knife. But then you say, this is great. It's like it's in the department stores. It's on sale now. Now I really want to buy more, you see. And that's the key to making big money and catching falling knives. You have to buy the things nobody else likes. The things that nobody else likes are more likely to be cheap. Like you were talking before about the microcaps. And your thesis is that nobody likes them because they're overlooked. They're too small to attract attention. And so you buy them and you're happy buying them because nobody else wants to buy them. And if nobody else wants to buy them, the price is probably low. But if you buy the things that everybody likes, everybody feels good about it, everybody's optimistic about it, the things that are on the front page of the newspaper every day because they're doing great, what possible reason would you have for thinking that you're getting a bargain? If everybody loves it, how can you possibly steal it at a bargain price? So this is why I say our job is to catch falling knives carefully. You don't want to do it without caution, but I think you don't want to shy away just because they're scary.
Real bargains hide in the unpopular stuff. If everyone is optimistic and piling in, the price is probably high, not cheap. So why would you expect a steal on a stock that's already the market's darling? Think of it like walking into a department store, which is actually the metaphor Marx himself uses. A stock's intrinsic value might be $100, but it's selling for $80. Now bad news hits and the price plunges to $50. Most investors sprint for the exit. But if your research still says it's worth $100, that plunge is a 50% off clearance rack with nobody else in the aisle. Instead of 25% upside from $80, you're looking at 100% upside from $50. Same company, same real value. The only thing that changed was everyone else's fear. The unsexy truth is this: by the time a stock feels safe again, a lot of the profit is already gone. In early 2020, the S&P 500 collapsed by 1/3 during the market shock, then ripped 20% higher in just 15 trading days. That surge happened while most people were still frozen, refreshing headlines, waiting for some all-clear signal that never comes the way you want it to. So how do you overcome that instinct? It starts with accepting that feeling scared is normal. Marx is telling us we need the right kind of fear. Not unreasoning panic, rational caution. You only catch a falling knife carefully. You do your homework on intrinsic value so you know whether a price drop is an overreaction or a genuine warning. You manage your risk. Maybe you buy in stages, a bit at 70, more at 60, more at 50, rather than all at once. That way, if you're early and it keeps dropping, you're still in the game. The courage to buy when others won't comes from preparation and analysis. So what does this kind of bold investing actually look like when billions of dollars are on the line? Marx has a war story, and it's a big one. Fourth quarter of 2008, the eye of the global financial crisis. Lehman Brothers had just collapsed. Markets were in free fall. Howard Marks and his team had raised an enormous $11 billion opportunity fund in anticipation of a crash. The moment had arrived. Fear was everywhere. Would they actually deploy that money or retreat to the sidelines like everyone else?
I think buying during the fourth quarter of '08, during the global financial crisis, we were worried about the market. So we raised a lot of money for our Opportunities Fund 7B. Prior to '07, the biggest distress fund in history was $2.5 billion. And that was our 2001 fund, $2.5 billion. So in '07-8, we raised $11 billion. So 4.5 times the size of the biggest fund in history because we thought there was a big opportunity coming. And we had that money and it was on the shelf, unspent mostly. I think that fund was 12% invested the day Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. So we have $11 billion sitting on the shelf, 10 now. Do you spend it or not? The world was very scary. Talk about falling knives. Most people were worried that the global financial system was going to melt down. And they weren't making it up, because in the recent months, Merrill Lynch, Bear Stearns, Wachovia National Bank, Washington Mutual, AIG, and now Lehman all went under or had to be rescued. And if the death spiral hadn't been arrested, chances are, for example, Morgan Stanley was next, because these companies were highly levered and interconnected. Each was dependent on the others. So like falling dominoes, right? But we concluded that we had to spend money. And my partner, Bruce Karsh, who runs those funds, started buying probably 2 to 3 business days after the Lehman bankruptcy, and invested an average of $450 million a week for the next 15 weeks. So in other words, invested $7 billion in a quarter.
Can we just pause for a second to appreciate what happened in that room? Picture Bruce Karsh, Marx's partner, sitting at his desk 2 or 3 business days after Lehman's bankruptcy, the biggest financial collapse since the Great Depression, and buying $450 million worth of distressed assets. Then doing it again the next week and the next. 15 weeks straight. They poured $7 billion into collapsing investments during the most frightening quarter most people have ever lived through. I'm getting chills just picturing this. People genuinely thought every bank could fail. The stock market was down 40%. Credit markets were frozen solid. No one would lend to anyone. Marx had raised that $11 billion precisely for this scenario, but deploying it was a gut check unlike anything in a textbook. He actually asked the billion-dollar question out loud. We have $10 billion sitting on the shelf. Do you spend it or not? Do you trust your analysis enough to buy when it looks like the end of the world? Here's what the data showed afterward. In 2008, junk bonds lost 26% as everyone panicked. In 2009, those same bonds skyrocketed 57%. An investor who bought at peak fear effectively doubled their money in a year. Bank of America stock hit just $3 in March 2009, and then delivered a 734% total return over the next decade. 734%. The only people who captured that reward were the ones brave enough to buy when everyone else was dumping shares like they were radioactive. Think about what that means for your retirement account. If you had $50,000 in an index fund and added just $5,000 during the March 2009 bottom, that $5,000 alone would have grown more than the original $50,000 did over the same period. The money you deploy in terror is worth multiples of the money you deploy in calm. Marx and Karsh spread their $7 billion across many beaten-down opportunities. The ones they judged would survive. Diversification and deep research were their safety gear, in case some of those knives were too sharp and went to zero. Now, of course, you and I aren't deploying $7 billion during a meltdown, but the principle scales down perfectly. The next time the market plunges, ask yourself, do I have a shopping list of solid companies I'd love to own at the right price? Have I done the deep work to know whether what is scaring the market is valid or just short-term noise? It will never feel easy. In March 2020, plenty of people knew it was a chance of a lifetime and still couldn't pull the trigger. I'll confess, I almost couldn't either. My heart was pounding. My palms were literally sweating as I bought shares in some of my favorite companies on one of those terrifying down days. Part of me was sure I was making a huge mistake. But looking back, I'm glad I did. Those buys are up big time now. Let me stress though, and this is important, this isn't blind risk-taking. As the name suggests, falling knives can be dangerous. Lehman Brothers never came back. Investors who bought Lehman stock at $20 on the way down thinking it was, quote, cheap, got wiped out completely. So how do we avoid catching the wrong falling knife? Focus on intrinsic value and margin of safety. If a company is plunging because it's fundamentally broken, cooking its books, drowning in debt with no way out, that's a value trap, a knife with no handle. But if it's plunging because of temporary hysteria while its core business is still solid, that's a different situation entirely. The key is doing the work to estimate what something is truly worth and having the patience and cash to wait for the panic price. Howard Marks teaches us that superior investing isn't about IQ or predicting the future. It's about going against your gut at the hardest possible moment. The next time you're staring at a sea of red on your screen, remember his question. If everybody loves it, how can it be a bargain? The flip side is equally true. If everybody hates it, might it actually be a bargain? As Marks proved in 2008, by the time the dust settles and things feel safe, the easy money has already been made by those who acted amid the chaos. If you want to keep building that contrarian mindset, check out this video where billionaire investor Chris Hone, often called the British Warren Buffett, reveals his secrets to destroying the market. I will see you over there.